I want you to think about the last time your F&I manager came to you frustrated. Customers are coming in preloaded. They've already decided they don't want anything. They're defensive. Before I even open my mouth, sound familiar? I hear the same version in almost every single dealership I walk into. And here's what most people are getting wrong about it. They think it's a customer problem or an internet problem. Customers are just more educated now. They read articles telling them not to buy F&I protections. It's a different buyer than it was 10 years ago. That's not what's happening. What's actually happening in 90% of the stores that I've audited is that your own sales floor is creating the objection before the customer ever sits down and finance. Your salespeople, your desk managers, your BDC, they're preloading resistance with their handoff language, and they don't even know they're doing it. You'll go back to the finance office, it's just paperwork. You don't have to buy anything back there. That sentence or some version of it is being said on your sales floor right now, today, and it's costing you somewhere between $300 and $700 per unit in suppressed F&I gross. Now, I've seen this in over 200 dealerships, the same pattern, the same language, and the same result. And the fix, the 3-sentence handoff script that takes 1 morning to install, reduces F&I objections by 35 to 45% within 30 days. My name is Jeremy Williams. I'm the president of the Assure Group, an F&I performance coaching agency, 18 years in automotive, over 200 stores installed. I'm going to show you exactly what's happening on your sales floor, why your F&I manager can't fix it alone, and what the dealer principal and the GM need to do about it. Because this isn't an F&I problem. This is a leadership blind spot. The old guard way of thinking about F&I is that it's a department, a separate thing. The salesperson sells the car, the desk works the deal, and then the customer gets turned to F&I. That word tells you everything about how the industry has thought about F&I for decades. The customer is an object being passed between stations. The sales floor's job is done. Now it's an F&I problem. The result of that thinking is a total disconnect between what happens on the floor and what happens in the F&I box. The salesperson doesn't think about F&I, doesn't understand F&I, and critically doesn't understand that what they say in the last 90 seconds of the sales interaction shapes everything that happens next. And here's the reframe. F&I performance doesn't start when the customer sits down in the finance office. It starts the moment the salesperson begins the transition. The handoff is the presentation. The first words that the customer hears about F&I from the person that they just spent 3 hours with building rapport are more powerful than anything the F&I manager can say afterwards. When the salesperson frames the F&I as paperwork, it becomes paperwork. When they frame it as optional, it becomes dismissible. When they frame it as adversarial, they're going to try to sell you stuff. It becomes adversarial. And the finance manager walks into the room where the battle was already lost. Before they open their mouth, the modern dealership understands something different. The customer experience is a continuous process. Sales, desk, and F&I. It's one transaction, and the language at every transition point either builds value or destroys it. Right now, in most stores, the transition language is destroying value. Actively, consistently, every single day. And nobody in leadership is watching it happen. Let me tell you what I hear when I do a floor audit. And I do a lot of floor audits. I'll stand on the sales floor, pull the camera footage when the store has it, and I'll listen to how salespeople transition the customer to finance. Here's what I hear over and over again in store after store. Okay, so you're all set. You're gonna go back and see Mike, he's in finance. It's mainly just paperwork, signing the contracts, getting you your payment info. He might go over some options with you, but you don't have to buy anything. I've heard that exact script almost word for word in dealerships across 30 states. It's like there's some underground program coaching salespeople to sabotage F&I gross. There isn't, of course, but what's actually happening is that salesperson is doing what feels natural. Managing expectations, reducing friction, making the customer feel comfortable. They think they're being helpful. They think they're being transparent. What they're actually doing is 3 things, and all 3 are devastating. First, they're anchoring the F&I paperwork as mainly just paperwork. Once that frame is set, the customer walks into the F&I office expected to sign and leave. When the F&I manager begins a protection presentation, it feels like an interruption, an ambush. I thought this was just paperwork. Why are you selling me things? The objection isn't about the protection, it's about the violated expectation. Second, they're pre-authorizing rejection. You don't have to buy anything. This is a killer. The salesperson has just given the customer explicit permission from a trusted source to just say no before the customer has ever heard a single word about what's being offered. They have been told that saying no is an expected, acceptable behavior. And here's the thing about customers. They want to opt out of things. That's the default. When a salesperson hands them an opt-out pass before they even sit down with the F&I manager, it's done before they start. Third, we've created an adversarial frame. He might try to go over some options. That word try implies resistance is appropriate. It implies the F&I manager is going to attempt something, and the customer's job is to not let them succeed. The customer walks in guarded with their arms crossed, literally and psychologically. Now here's the math on what it costs you. I've measured this in controlled environments when we audited a store's handoff language and find destructive patterns, which is almost every store. The F&I objection rate in the first 2 minutes of the presentation is typically 60 to 70%. 6 or 7 out of 10 customers raising resistance before the F&I manager has finished the menu walkthrough. After we fix the handoff, that early objection rate drops to 25 to 35%. Same customers, same F&I manager, same total premiums. The only variable that changed was what happened on the sales floor. And when early objections drop, the per retail profitability goes up. Not because the F&I manager learned a new closing technique, because they are no longer starting every deal in a hole that somebody else dug. I worked with a store in Texas, 200 units a month. Per retail unit was sitting at $1,250. Good F&I manager, experience. The GM's complaint was customers come in with their walls up. My guy spends the first 10 minutes just trying to get them to relax. I spent 1 day on their floor. 1 day. Listened to 14 customer handoffs. 11 out of 14 included some version of you don't have to buy anything, or it's just paperwork. 11 out of 14. That's 78% of their customers were being preloaded with resistance by their own team. The GM had no idea. He never listened to the handoff. He never asked his salespeople what they say when they walk the customer to finance. It wasn't on his radar. That's the blind spot. And it's not rare. It's the norm. When you're a dealer principal or a GM and you've never audited your handoff language, when you've never stood on your own floor and listened to what your salespeople actually say when they transition the customer to F&I, you need to do that. Or just text me, 206-424-9851. Text the word handoff, and I'll send you the exact audit framework that we use. 3 things to listen for. Takes 10 minutes. I'll tell you exactly how much money your sales floor is leaving on the table. Text me, 206-242-9851. 206-242-9851. Text the word handoff. I figured this out the hard way. Early in my career, long before I took over the Assura Group, I was working with an F&I manager who was one of the best I've ever seen. Technically flawless. Protection knowledge was elite. Could present a menu, handle objections, and build value. He was literally the best of them. When his numbers were mediocre, I couldn't figure it out. So I sat in on his deals. His presentation was clean. His process was tight. But the customer after customer came in cold, resistant from the jump. I kept thinking it was a personality thing. Maybe his energy was off. Maybe the customers could sense something. I was looking at everything inside the F&I office, finding nothing wrong. Then one afternoon, I happened to be standing on the showroom floor when a salesperson was walking the customer back to the finance department, and I heard it. All right, folks, you're gonna head back and see Dave. It's just a business office, mainly paperwork and contracts. He might mention a few things, but no pressure at all. You don't have to do anything you don't wanna do. And I watched the customer's body language shift in real time. They had been relaxed, smiling, excited about their new car. In a span of a 15-second handoff, their shoulders were tightened, the smile faded. They looked at each other with that look. Here comes the sales pitch look. By the time they walk into Dave's office, they were the different people than what they had been just 30 seconds earlier. Dave wasn't meeting customers. He was meeting the version of the customer that the salesperson just created. That was the moment I understood. F&I performance is determined by what happens before the F&I office. The handoff isn't just logistics. The handoff is the first first act of the F&I presentation, and it's being performed by someone else. Someone who has zero F&I knowledge, zero awareness of what they're doing, and zero accountability for the outcome. When I took over the Assure group in 2016 and started walking into stores at scale, I had made the audit a standard part of our diagnostic. What I found confirmed what I'd seen with Dave, but at an industrial scale. 200 plus stores across every franchise, every market, in every volume tier. The same handoff language, the same patterns, the same suppressed per retail unit profitability, and the same leadership blind spot. Nobody at the ownership level had ever thought about it, measured it, or managed it. This wasn't a coaching gap in F&I, this was a systems gap in leadership. Here's exactly how we fix it. What we install is called the Objection Prevention Framework. That's the third pillar of Assure Ops. Notice the word prevention, not handling, not overcoming, preventing. The entire philosophy is that the best objection is the one that never forms. And the place where most objections form isn't in the F&I office. It's on the sales floor. Step one, the handoff audit. Before we change anything, we observe and document. We listen to 20 to 30 live handoffs, either in person during a store visit or through recorded calls. We're cataloging every destructive phrase, every poisonous framing, every moment where the transition language undermines F&I. We score each handoff on a simple 3-point scale. Does it build value? Is it neutral? Or does it destroy value? In most stores, the distribution is about 5% build, 15% neutral, and 80% destroy. That 80% is your problem. Step two, the 3-sentence handoff. We replace the improvised destructive handoff with a scripted, intentional 3-sentence transition. Here's the structure. Not the exact words, because we customize this to each store, but we're looking at the architecture. Sentence one, reframe the F&I office as a value delivery point, not a transaction or checkpoint. Instead of, you're going to finance for paperwork, it becomes a sentence that frames the F&I office as a place where the customer learns how to protect their investment. The word paperwork never appears. The word investment or protection, those words appear. Sentence two, introduce the finance manager by name with a credibility marker. Instead of, you'll see Mike, it becomes a sentence that positions Mike as an expert. Someone who is for the customer, not someone who is going to sell to the customer. Mike is our protection specialist. He is going to walk you through your options and make sure you're covered. One sentence completely changes the frame. Sentence three, set the expectation of engagement, not escape. Instead of, you don't have to buy anything, it becomes a sentence that normalizes the conversation and frames choosing to be protected as the natural next step. Most of our customers take a few minutes to go through the options. It's worth it to see what's available for your situation. Social proof. Most customers do this, plus framing engagement as the default behavior, not resistance. 3 sentences. Takes the salesperson 10 seconds to deliver, but those 10 seconds change the next 30 minutes in the F&I office. Step 3, installation and accountability. This is where most people would stop. They'd hand the sales team a script. They'd do a quick role play and hope for the best. We don't do that because scripts without accountability revert to old behavior within a week. We install the handoff as a managed process. The sales manager or the desk manager is responsible for hearing the handoff. There's a weekly check. We listen to the sample handoffs and we score them. Handoff quality becomes a metric that leaderships track. Just like closing ratio or front end gross. This part, that requires you, the dealer principal, the GM, because your salespeople, they don't report to the F&I manager. They report to the sales manager who reports to you. The F&I manager can't fix this. They have no authority over what happens on the sales floor. This is a leadership decision, an ownership decision. You have to decide that the handoff matters, that it's going to be managed, and that there are consequences for destroying its value before the customer reaches the box. Step 4, the feedback loop. Once the handoff is installed, we create a mechanism between F&I and sales. When the F&I manager hears a customer say, I was told that this is just paperwork, or I was told I don't have to buy anything, that gets flagged. Not punitively, diagnostically. The sales manager gets the data, coaches the salesperson, and the pattern gets corrected. Over time, the handoff becomes part of the dealership's culture, not just a script. The salespeople understand why it matters. They see the F&I numbers improve. They see their own CSI scores improve because customers who are properly framed have better experiences in F&I. Less friction, less adversarial energy, less frustration, everyone wins. But only when somebody at the top makes it a priority. Hey, real quick, if you're getting value from this, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. It helps more than you think. And look, if there's anything I can help you with, anything at all with your F&I process, just text me, 206-424-9851. That's a real number. I see every message. All right, let's keep going. Let me give you the data across our installs. Across the 200 plus stores where we have installed the objection prevention framework, the average reduction in early stage stage F&I objections, meaning the objections that occur in the first 2 minutes of the presentation, is 38%. Some stores see 35, some see 45, but 38% is the median. That 38% reduction translates to an average per retail unit increase of $350 to $500 per unit. And that's from a handoff fix alone. Before we touch the menu sequence, the presentation process, or the coaching cadence, let me go back to that Texas store. 200 units a month, the per retail unit profitability was $1,250. We installed the 3-sentence handoff, coached the sales team in one morning session, it took about 90 minutes, set up the accountability structure with the sales manager. 30 days later, the per retail unit was at $1,574. That's a $324 per unit increase on 200 units, $64,800 in additional monthly gross from a handoff script. 60 days later, once that handoff became habitual, the F&I manager adjusted his process to match the new energy of the customer, and the per retail unit went up again to $1,719 a car. That's a $469 per unit increase, $93,800 per month, $1.1 million in annualized gross to the dealership. The GM told me, and he said this in front of his entire management team, I spent 3 years trying to fix F&I by fixing F&I. The problem was on my sales floor the entire time. Here's another one. A group in the Midwest, 12 rooftops. Their F&I director had been pushing for the handoff work for 2 years. Nobody listened. That's a sales issue, not an F&I issue. That classic silo mentality, we came in, did the handoff audit across all 12 stores. The results were almost identical. 75 to 80% of the handoffs were value destructive. The F&I director had been right for 2 years and nobody listened because it crossed departmental lines. We installed the framework across 12 stores in 2 weeks. Group wide, the profitability grew by $413 per unit within 60 days across their combined volume of about 1,800 units per month. That's $743,400 in additional monthly gross from F&I. The dealer principal of that group said something that I think about often. The most expensive wall in my dealership isn't the one between the showroom and the service drive. It's the one between sales and F&I. That wall isn't physical, it's organizational, and only ownership can tear it down. Let me explain why this works at a deeper level, because once you understand the psychology, you'll see this pattern everywhere, not just in F&I. The primacy effect in cognitive psychology. The primacy effect describes a phenomenon where the first information a person receives about something carries disproportionate weight in their overall judgment. First impressions aren't just a social nicety, they're a neurological reality. The customer's first impression of F&I isn't formed in the F&I office. It's formed on the sales floor in the handoff. When the first information they receive frames the F&I as paperwork and pressure, that frame becomes the lens through which they interpret everything that follows. The F&I manager's warm greeting gets filtered through, this person is going to try to sell me something. The menu presentation gets filtered through, I was told I don't have to buy any of this. The primacy effect means your F&I manager isn't starting from zero. They are starting from whatever frame the salesperson set. And when that frame is negative, the F&I manager is fighting uphill against a neurological bias that's almost impossible to overcome with word tracks alone. Inoculation theory. In psychology, inoculation theory describes how exposure to a weak form of an argument makes people resistant to the full argument later. When a salesperson says you don't have to buy anything, that's an inoculation. It's a weak, preemptive counter argument against the F&I presentation, and it works exactly the way inoculation works in medicine. The customer develops antibodies against the F&I manager's value proposition before they ever are exposed to it. The customer heard the counter argument first. Now they're prepared to resist. Not because they evaluated the protections and decided against them, but because they were inoculated against being influenced. And that is why the traditional objection handling often fails to solve this problem. Those approaches focus on overcoming objections, but these aren't real objections. They are inoculated responses. The customer isn't saying, I don't see the value in a vehicle service agreement. They're saying, I was told I don't need to buy anything here. Fundamentally different problems, fundamentally different solutions. The solution isn't a better objection handling technique. The solution is eliminating the inoculation at the source. Authority transfer. The salesperson has spent 1 to 3 hours building rapport and trust with the customer. They are at the moment of handoff, they are the most trusted person in the building from the customer's perspective. Whatever the salesperson says carries the weight of that earned authority. When the salesperson frames F&I negatively, that negative frame carries the full authority of the trusted relationship. The F&I manager who just met the customer cannot match the authority in the first few minutes. They're fighting against the salesperson's credibility, not just the customer's resistance. But when the salesperson frames F&I positively, introduces the F&I manager as an expert, frames the office as a value delivery point, normalizes the engagement, that positive frame carries the same authority. The customer walks in primed to listen and primed to engage. They're primed to be helped. The salesperson is the most powerful F&I tool in your building. They just don't know it. And right now, they're working against you. Here's what I need you to understand. This is not a coaching issue. This is not an F&I issue. This is a leadership issue. Your F&I manager cannot fix the handoff. They're not on the floor when it happens. They have no authority over the salespeople who say it. They can complain about it, and I can tell you that they have, but complaining doesn't change behavior. Your sales manager can't fix it either, not on their own, because the handoff language has never been defined, never been scripted, never been managed as a process. It's not on any checklist. It's not on any scorecard. It exists. It's in the no man's land between the two departments, and nobody owns it. Nobody will take responsibility for it. The only person who can fix this is the person who owns both departments. That's you, the dealer principal, the general manager, or the operator who has the authority to say, the handoff is now a managed process, and here's the script, here's the accountability, here's how we measure it. That's the difference between the old guard and a modern dealership. The old guard treats departments as silos. Sales does the sales, F&I does the F&I, and the gaps between them bleed money every single day. The modern dealership treats the customer's experience as one continuous system. The transition points and the handoffs, the introductions, the framing, they are all the highest leverage moments in that system. You're already managing your sales process, managing your desking process, managing your F&I presentation. The one thing you're not managing is the 15 seconds that connect sales to F&I. And those 15 seconds are determining 35 to 45% of your F&I objection volume. Here's what I want you to do tomorrow morning, not next week, not when you get a chance. Walk into your sales floor, stand near the desk or near the transition area where the salespeople walk customers to F&I and listen. Listen to what they actually say, not what you think they say, not what your sales manager told you that they say, what they actually say to the real customers in their own words. When you hear it's just paperwork, you have a problem. When you hear you don't have to buy anything, you have a problem. When you hear the F&I manager being introduced as finance instead of by name with a credibility marker, you have a problem. And now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. You'll hear it in every handoff. You'll start counting, and the number will be higher than you think. The fix is a 3-sentence script, one morning to install, a weekly accountability check to maintain. This will reduce F&I objections by 35 to 45% within 30 days. We've done this in over 200 stores. The pattern is always the same. The problem is always the same. The solution is always the same, because human psychology doesn't change from store to store. Only the awareness of it does. When you want the handoff audit framework, the exact tool that we use to diagnose this, text me. 206-424-9851, text handoff. I'll send it to you, free, no pitch, because once you see the problem, you'll know why we exist. And when you want us to come in and install the full objection prevention framework, the handoff, the accountability structure, the feedback loop, we can do it in one day to fix a problem that's been bleeding your F&I growth since the day you opened your doors. My name is Jeremy Williams. I'm the president of the Assura Group. We've installed this system in over 200 dealerships, and I can tell you with certainty that the objections your F&I manager is fighting every single day were created on your sales floor by your people in your knowledge gap. The good news, it's the easiest fix in the building. 3 sentences, one morning, measurable results in 30 days. So here's what I want you to do. Text me, 206-424-9851. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me where you're stuck. Tell me what you want to fix. I read every message, and if I can help, I will. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.